Greetings, my name is Amanda and I work with Pinnacle Teaching Solutions. As language teachers, we all know that practice and presentation are a must for every class. But what does that look like in a virtual classroom? One element of creating both practice and presentation for our students is through discussion groups. Today I'm going to give you practical tips to help build your confidence in running a discussion group in your live online classroom. Tip number 1, plan ahead for multiple options. Think about group numbers. Will your groups remain the same throughout the class? How many times will you break out into discussion groups? Will the same students be in the same group each time? As you're thinking through these things, determine how many students will be in each group so you can easily split the class into smaller groups. I try not to exceed 5 students in a group. A good-sized group where everyone gets a chance to speak is 3 to 5 students. You also, in preparing and planning ahead for multiple discussion group options, you want to go ahead and prepare those discussion topics and questions. Be sure that you have them on a slide your students can see, but also paste them in the chat box so students have access to them at all times. As you're preparing and planning ahead, determine how much time you will give for each discussion. Make sure the students know how much time they have in their group time. Set a timer so students know when they have 1 minute left and can wrap up their conversation. And be sure to build time into the end of the discussions so that the whole group can participate. Making sure that a group with 5 students doesn't only have 3 minutes to speak, but instead has more time so they can all talk. Tip number 2, create boundaries. It's so important that your students know the boundaries and expectations of their discussions. So the first thing you do is create an etiquette in discussions. At the beginning of your class, make sure your students know when you want their microphones on mute. Do you want them on mute while you're talking or while other students are talking? Do you want them on mute the whole time? What does that look like? They also should know that when you break them into discussion groups, their microphones should be unmuted so that everyone can freely speak. Obviously, they're not speaking on top of each other, but having their microphones unmuted gives them the space to speak. You want to let students know that you expect all of them to participate in the discussion group, and let them know that at the end of their discussion, when you all come back as a large class, one person from each group will give an update on the discussion. That will help students keep focused as they're speaking because they know the expectations. You also want to create an agenda. Communicate your agenda. Go over the discussion topics as a whole class. Be clear on what you expect students to communicate. For example, when you put your students in a breakout group, you want them each to give their own thought or opinion on a subject. However, as a group, they need to determine what they will share and one unified thought. You also want to set expectations. Let them know that you plan to pop in and observe them while they're speaking to one another. Let them know that you expect one person from each group to share, to take notes, and to give feedback. If they have questions, that they can send you a message and you're able to come into their chat, and or they can write the question down and ask you when they return to the larger group. Tip number 3, use students to help you. Our students are so tech savvy. They are really good at a lot of these online classrooms when you and I are probably a little less advanced. So have a student join in the admin and do the breakout groups for you. Let them separate people into groups. They're really good at things like that. You should also recruit your students to lead discussion. Give them a heads up that they'll lead the group. That doesn't mean they have to know all of the information prior to, but they're expected to make sure everyone in the group speaks. Also, it's really great to give the students an opportunity to ask questions of one another when they all return to the large classroom. And tip number 4, expect an outcome. As you observe discussion groups, take note of the things you need to discuss with the whole class. When you hear important information or you hear one question in multiple groups that's brought up, you can write this down and then bring it up when everyone returns. Also, it's good to have one person from each group share when they return to the large group. But you want to give others the chance to add their thoughts, and you can do that in a chat or vocally. They can raise their hand, they can just speak out, or maybe they type it in the chat. It's up to you. This should help you lead a discussion in your online classroom. Let's review the 4 tips. Number 1, plan ahead for multiple discussion groups options. Number 2, create boundaries with etiquette and an agenda so that the groups can run smoothly. Number 3, use your students to help lead the discussion groups. Number 4, expect an outcome. If a discussion is successful, every group should have something to share. I hope these tips are helpful for you in your classroom. Remember that Pinnacle Teaching Solutions is here for you, walking alongside you as we all grow to be better online teachers. If you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to send us an email.